Hello, my dear friends. You're in the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 5th of October of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first, we're going to continue our discussion of our topic about another massive missile and drone attack that took place during the previous night between the 4th and the 5th of October of 2025. I would like to remind you that this map was published this morning by pro-Ukrainian resources, and here we can see lots of routes to attacks. The Russians used missiles, drones, the Russians used hypersonic missiles, cruise missiles, and just regular ballistic missiles. As you can see, the Russians attacked many targets, many localities all over the entire territory of Ukraine. Later, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine published this article where we can see the exact number of drones and missiles that were used by Russia. According to this report, the Russians used around 550 air units, air vehicles, including drones and missiles altogether. So the most important number probably is the number of Ha-101 missiles that were used by Russia. According to this report, the Russians used 42 cruise missiles Ha-101. This is probably the biggest number of missiles used by Russia since the beginning of the special military operation in the combination with drones. And of course, during the day we were receiving lots of updates, but before we were moving to them, I would like to discuss with you the statement that was made by Zelensky right after this attack. Zelensky calls for unilateral ceasefire in the sky after massive Russian strikes across Ukraine. Zelensky has appealed for what he called a unilateral ceasefire in the sky following today's large-scale Russian missile and drone assault on Ukrainian territory. A unilateral ceasefire in the sky is possible, and it could open the path to real diplomacy. America and Europe must act to force Putin to stop, Zelensky wrote on his Telegram channel. I'm not sure whether the Western countries are going to do anything with Russia, because, for example, today the president of the Russian Federation also made a very important statement. He stated that he was talking about Tomahawk missiles, and transferring Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine will ruin relations with US. The president commented on Washington's possible transfer of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. This will lead to the destruction of our relations, and at very least, it will destroy the positive trends that have emerged. So most likely the Western countries will not be able to do anything with the situation. Obviously, the only possible solution for Zelensky is to start talks with the Russian Federation, and probably to start searching for some compromise with this situation with air defense and with just a special military operation. Now let's discuss videos that were published during the day, and first let's talk about the city of Chernigov. So this video was published from this locality, and here we can see how Russians, as a result of missile and drone attack, destroyed fuel depot in the northern part of the settlement. So this is not the first strike carried out by Russia on infrastructure of the city of Chernigov and the Chernigov region. So most likely the Russians managed to deal significant damage to the city. Furthermore, the Russians attacked the western part of Ukraine, and the biggest number of explosions and missiles were recorded exactly in this area. The head of the Lvov administration stated that 140 Shaheds and 23 cruise missiles. So the Lvov region suffered the largest attack since February 2022. And during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of videos of how Russians were attacking the settlement. In this video, we can see how Ukrainian military object was attacked by Russian Geraint drone. Very heavy explosion, as you can see, was recorded. The biggest number of attacks took place in this area. As you can see, the satellite picture of this area wasn't updated since this picture was made. The Ukrainians created lots of buildings and constructions in this area. So one of the constructions was the industrial plant, this one, and the Russians attacked exactly this area. The sources are saying that the Western countries, Ukraine, were using this building as a logistic hub. The European weapons, arms, different things were moving on the territory of Ukraine and further in the direction of the line of combat contact through this logistic hub. We're not talking that this was the only logistic hub. Obviously, there are hundreds of these constructions all over the entire western part of Ukraine, but obviously this one most likely was very important. Maybe not for military facilities, but obviously this situation, this building construction was very important for the Lvov region itself. So this is at the moment right after the Russians attacked the territory. The entire building construction was completely destroyed and reduced to ruins. Furthermore, the sources are saying that the Russians were attacking different positions and different facilities and constructions in the western part of Ukraine. We're talking about the settlements of Medici. So the Russians are saying that some underground gas storage station was damaged and destroyed. The settlement of Drohobych, the Russians are saying that they attacked some facilities in this area as well. So mainly the gas transportation systems and many other different important things that Ukrainians use for their economy and of course for military purposes. So the situation is very critical, and we understand why Zelensky is asking for this ceasefire, for this unilateral ceasefire in the sky. Basically, he doesn't have any other option. The Western countries will not provide him air defense system, enough of air defense system that can be used by Ukraine to cover the entire sky above Ukraine. We see that the Western countries stop talking about idea that they can bring down Russian missiles in the western part of Ukraine. So basically, the sky of Ukraine is currently without any defense, and of course the Russians use the situation, especially during the clashes that are currently taking place along the line of combat contact. Before we discuss the situation on the ground, another important video was published from the Belgorod direction. So this is the video that today was published by the pro-Russian resources, and here we can see how Russians, as a result of reconnaissance operation, managed to discover the position of the HIMARS system of the United States of America, of Ukraine, that was sent before by the United States of America. And when Russians discovered this position, they attacked this territory with Iskander missile, and as a result of this attack, the entire HIMARS system and radar were completely destroyed without any chances to repair. So this is the video. Another important thing, that today we got a lot of reports that Ukrainians launched massive drone attack in the direction of the city of Belgorod. The Russians are saying that their air defense is at work. They're bringing drones, lots of drones. Since the beginning of the day, they destroyed probably dozens of drones in the area of the city of Belgorod, and probably the Ukrainians were planning to use this HIMARS system also to attack the city of Belgorod after Ukrainians use hundreds of drones with the purpose to uncharge Russian air defense. But we see that the Russians managed to discover this HIMARS system before in advance and to destroy it. So most likely Ukraine attempts or Ukraine plans to attack the city of Belgorod failed. They will attack with drones, but this will not lead to damage that Ukrainians were planning to deal with, of course, HIMARS system as well. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. Let's discuss the most important topics that we haven't covered during the previous video. And first, let's talk about the Pokrovsk direction. It seems that a turning point in the battle for the city of Pokrovsk has begun, or has already finished. The Russians are advancing, and the Russians are advancing both in the city of Pokrovsk itself. The southern part, according to several sources, have already been captured by Russia. The western part was also captured. The Russians continue consolidation of their position in the western part with the purpose to move further in the direction of the industrial zone, which is located on the northern part of the city. So very powerful and probably the most important battle for the city of Pokrovsk is ahead of us. Furthermore, the Russians, according to information we have, managed to improve their position significantly in the area of breakthrough. We have lots of videos today that were published by Ukraine resources. The first one took place in the southern parts of the Shpok. It's in the central part of Novotoretsk. The Ukrainians were bombing Russian soldiers exactly in this point, and based on this video, most of the mappers this morning adjusted the settlement of Novotoretsk almost under complete control of the armed force of the Russian Federation. Later, we got another video published by Ukrainian resources, and here we can see how Ukrainians were bombing Russians on the outskirts of the settlement of Vladimirovka, which means that the Russians, as a result of counter-offensive, first managed to recapture Novotoretsk, and then Russians moved further in the northern direction and answered the settlement of Vladimirovka once again. Furthermore, this information today was confirmed by several neutral mappers and pro-Russian resources that indeed, as a result of counter-offensive operation, the Russians managed to recapture the settlement of Novotoretsk and to re-answer the settlement of Vladimirovka. This is very important piece of news because now we see that Ukrainian counter-attack failed completely. Ukrainians made lots of attempts. They lost lots of soldiers, lots of manpower and forces with the purpose to cut the area of Russian breakthrough, but we see that all attempts of the armed force Ukraine failed. Now the Russians are beginning their own counter-attack, and this time the Russians are tasked to capture completely this Shakhovo pocket. I would like to remind you that several days ago, several pro-Western resources reported that the Russians managed to break through Ukraine defense and to capture the road between the settlements of Sofiivka and Novopavlovka. And right after we got this report, basically the Ukraine counter-offensive operation collapsed. Exactly from this very moment, from this very article, the Russians began their counter-offensive operation, and now we are adjusting the map just in the Russian favor. Furthermore, as we can see, the Russians improved their positions to the north of the settlement of Novoshakhova, and this update also was made based on the video that was published by Ukrainian resources. Here we can see how Ukrainians were FPV droning and attacking soldiers of the armed forces of the Russian Federation in this part of the settlement. Based on this video, we have adjusted this part. So it seems that the battle for the Shakhova pocket is going to be finished very soon, probably 1, 2, 3 weeks, and that's it. And most likely during the same period of time, the Russians will try to improve their positions significantly, as well on the territory of the city of Pokrovsk. So we believe that once again the Russians are entering the final phase of the battle for the settlement of Pokrovsk, and it seems that probably before the end of the 2025 the Russians will capture this locality completely. We're not saying about the Konstantinovka-Slaviansk area. Most likely the clashes will continue in this area in 2026, but when talking about this locality, most likely by the end of the 2025 the Russians will finish the battles for the city of Liman and for the city of Siversk. And now let's discuss the situation in this area. Today, the chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Siversk, stated that the situation was completely secured and stabilized in the area of the city of Yampol. He stated that they managed to introduce additional reinforcements and reserves in this area, and that Ukrainians managed to stabilize the situation completely. The Russians are telling us a completely different story. They're saying that there is no stabilization. The Russians continue their offensive operation. Indeed, the Ukrainians introduced several units and forces and battalions in this area with the purpose to stabilize, but every single attack or counter-attack from Ukrainian side was repelled. Ukrainians suffered huge losses, and the Russians continue their offensive operation. In this video, we can see how Ukrainians brought additional vehicle with the purpose to counter-attack, but the vehicle was completely destroyed by Russian FPV drones. Furthermore, and the most important video is coming from the road TO 514 between the city of Liman and the settlement of Slaviansk. Here we can see the only big and probably reliable logistic road that Ukrainians had before to support their contingent on the Russian side of the river of Siversk Donetsk. But here we can see that Russians, as a result of FAB attack, destroyed the bridge completely. Anyway, the bridge was destroyed, but the pontoon bridge managed to survive. As you can see, there is a pontoon bridge in this area that Ukrainians use for logistic purposes. Most likely in coming days or in hours, the bridge would be also destroyed. Maybe the bridge have been already destroyed by Russia. As of now, we don't have proofs, but now we understand what the Russians are tasked for. The Russians are going to intensify their activities, and furthermore, very interesting updates is coming from the Siversk direction. Today, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the units of the Group of Forces South managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Kuzminovka. So this is the second settlement that is located on the river of Bakhmutka, on the Ukrainian side of the river of Bakhmutka. Just a few days ago, the Russians captured the settlement of Fyodorovka. Now the Russians crossed the river of Bakhmutka and captured the settlement of Kuzminovka. Now the Russians most likely will continue offensive operation with the purpose to establish control over this elevation that is located to the north of the settlement of Fyodorovka and to the west of the settlement of Kuzminovka. When Russians capture this foothold, they will be able to continue offensive operation further in the northern direction towards this road between the city of Siversk and the city of Alexandrovka. This is the only reliable supply road that Ukrainians currently have, and if Russians can cut this road physically, this is going to be the end of the battle for the city of Siversk without any chances for Ukrainians to hold their positions for a very long period of time. At the same time, the Russians are advancing to the south, to the southeast, and to the east of the city of Siversk, cutting more positions of the armed forces of Ukraine, trying to shorten the distance to the city of Siversk. So everything is about just one thing: to capture the city of Siversk before the end of 2025. And based on all these reports, we believe that most likely this is going to happen. As of now, it's very difficult for Ukrainians to hold their positions there, but as of now, everything, of course, depends depends on the city of Yampol. If Russians are able to regroup themselves and to carry out another offensive operation in this region and to capture the city of Yampol and to cut the roads between the city of Limansk and Siver, this is going to be the end of the city of Siversk and the defense of the city of Siversk that started in 2022 and have lasted for around 4 or 5 years. So this is the situation in this direction. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.